Let's get started. Leonard, I wanted to go to you first. Something that came up in the earlier panel today, Howard Lorber and Pam Liebman beat up on Compass. There's no nice way to put it. Howard was saying that he thinks the firm will go out of business in several years, and this is your old employer. What's your reaction? Also, they were commenting on aggressive recruiting strategies.
Well, I have to say, in 2 weeks' time, I'll be celebrating my 3rd-year anniversary at Compass, and I guess that is 2.5 years later than when the company was said to be going out of business back when I started. So, I started when there were 60 people, and today we're over 1,700. And I can understand the difficulty some people have when you have a new player in town. It's difficult to adapt to it, and I think what we have to do as a company is focus on who we are, which is a culture of inclusiveness and fairness, and we want to elevate the industry. So it's not just a movement about building a great company, it's about elevating our industry. And I think in the last 3 years, we've had a spectacular impact on the industry, and we're very, very thankful to all our co-brokers in the city as well as around the country for building up what I think is a very important company. And I understand how people could imagine that could fail. I think any company can fail. Who would think that JCPenney would fail? Who would think that Barnes & Noble wouldn't be selling books anymore? So I think there are a lot of arguments to be made to support an argument as to why someone could think that Compass could fail, but I think the history of the company to date is pretty impressive. I'm impressed with it because to be number 1 in Washington, D.C., to be number 2 in San Francisco after just a few months, literally, is pretty exceptional. And I do think we're going to be around for quite a while. I don't know if it's 5 years, 50 years, or 500 years. No one knows.
Thanks, Leonard. I just wanted to give you a chance to respond to that. I wanted to get into some of the market conditions we're seeing. Dolly, we talked on the phone earlier. What are you seeing in terms of concessions on the part of developers? How extensive are they now? When you're looking at concessions, are they X% of the sticker price of a condo? What level are you seeing?
Well, I think it depends on a lot of things. One is where in their timetable they are. Are they at the beginning? Are they at the middle? Are they almost sold out? It depends on what is sold out, right? So if their penthouses aren't moving and you have a bid on a penthouse, chances are you're going to get a great deal. So it really depends on many factors, but we are finding great deals. And we're most pleased when we're representing a buyer and we see the other closings around our buyers being higher than ours. That always thrills us.
So what are the conceivable ranges there? I mean, are you getting anything, concessions from 2% of a purchase price up to 20%? I mean, how wide could it be?
I haven't seen anything as low as 2. I've seen 10, and I've seen up to 20. So it really depends, again, on where they are in the process, how much they need that sale, how many of those they have, all those types of factors.
And are the types of concessions changing?
Well, they're actually making dollar concessions versus I'll pay your transfer taxes, I'll do this, I'll do that. They're actually making real dollar concessions.
Richard, how about at 432 Park?
Anyone that tells you that they're not making concessions, I think, is not being fully transparent. We're 80% sold. I'm here to tell you the true facts. I don't know what the market is telling anyone. We were a $2.6 billion sellout. We're at $2 billion now worth of sales. That's 80% of the units sold, and we are negotiating. Now, certainly we're not giving the units away, but the last 20% of any development is really the profit. Our hard and soft costs are paid for. The mortgages are paid for. There's no debt anymore. So all of this is gravy, and if a developer will make $600 million in profit, I think in this market he'll be happy to make $450 million in profit.
But your guys have real staying power versus all developers across the board, right? So CIM is an exception to most rules.
And we also came in at a great time. Remember, we came in 2.5 years ago when the market was still very, very strong. We had people rushing to the sales office to sell. To me, anyone that's in the ground now and is a year away from completion, I would be concerned.
Agreed.
Ryan, you had a deal at the Time Warner Center that closed at a 70% discount to its original asking price, which is pretty incredible. Now, you weren't the broker on the initial listing. It went on the market in 2013. Tell me what the whole process like was there, the seller education and everything like that.
I wasn't the first broker. I think I was the fifth.
Yeah, everybody in this room worked with the seller.
Yeah, which is the best way to do it. I love being broker number 5, by the way. Because by then they'd been fully educated. So it was pretty simple for me. It was a matter of looking at active comparables versus anything else. Because our listing price that we went back to market with, which was 16, which was down from the most recent of 18, which was down from the original price of 50, which wasn't realistic, but that wasn't me.
What were these sellers thinking? I mean, what was their mindset initially?
There was no data to point them in any other direction other than, sure, yes, let's try it. Because things were sort of selling in that range. And so everyone thinks that their home is the most valuable and most expensive out there, and so they want to try it. And unfortunately and fortunately, New York has shown us time and time again that sometimes if you list it, buyers will come. 99% of the time, they won't. But that 1% chance, if you're going to make a few extra $1 million, it's hard sometimes, especially right at the beginning, to convince sellers off the ledge. Except for now, because everybody, I don't care what their price point is, they're searching for real estate in their phone, right? Which I think is a huge push to companies like Compass, and why I don't think Compass is going out of business. I think the opposite will happen. Listen, that's $100, okay?
Is that a recruitment pitch?
And you get a price within search boxes, right? So my conversation with the seller there was pretty simple. It was, listen, if you list at $18 million, you are going to be dealing with a $20 million buyer. So let's look at it like prize fighters, okay? If you're trying to get up into your next weight class before you weigh into a boxing match, you're going to be the lightest guy in a fight going up against someone who's a lot heavier than you are. Or you do what the best fighters do. You bulk up, and then right before you go into the ring, you cut down so that you are the toughest, biggest guy in the ring in that weight class. So by going to 16, we were in the next search box, in the next search category, and we sold it in 10 days. Mm-hmm. What's up? What is up?
So Brenda, you had a deal at Time Warner that closed for $39 million, which was only $11 million off the asking price. What did that look like? What was the seller education there? How did you get that deal done?
Well, that was a very special scenario because that apartment was rented for 5 years. And so it was rented, we couldn't show it. And, you know, the market has changed in a way that prices have adjusted. So the most important thing is to be able to communicate with your buyer, your seller, rather, sorry, and let him know what's going on with the market. And based on those circumstances, we were able to make the deal. I mean, that was almost close to $8,000 a foot. You know, but they're really one of a kind because you only really have 3 penthouses at Time Warner and then 1 duplex and 2 other simplex. Mm-hmm. And they were all originally 5 penthouses. It's a very special building. We have the Mandarin flagship. It's beautiful property and very well, but you know, very well built. I mean, Darlene, you know, you've sold a lot in there.
Great apartment. You did an amazing job. I have to tell you, that is a great price.
That's pretty cool. So
yeah.
So when you talk about the market, I think, you know,
yeah. So that kind of raises the question for me, and this is a broad question, but it's always hard to get a pinpoint sense of this. Where do you think the top of the market was looking back, and where are we now in an X-inning game? Like, where do you think we are?
I think we're stabilizing. Things are just maybe slowing down. But as you heard your other people, you know, Spitzer, all the other people speak, we're very unique. I mean, I think we're the best city in the world, you guys. We have everything here, and the most important thing is infrastructure. You know, transportation, education, security.
Mm-hmm. Are you talking numbers? Where do you think we're down from last year?
In terms of prices, where do you think the top of the market was?
I mean, I don't know what the rest of the panel thinks. I think we're easily down 15, 20% than we were from 12 to 18 months ago. Mm-hmm. you know, the high-end buyer, when you think about it, in my experience, there's always been an emerging economy that's had great wealth. At one point, it was Brazil. Their economy is shot. China with a false economy. Russians, they have all their money in London, and they've pretty much bought over the past 2 years. And in my experience, I've been doing this a long time, there's always been a new country with great wealth. I don't see that out there. I don't know, India, I don't think they're there anymore. Venezuela, they have no president. I mean, I just don't know where these new wealthy buyers are coming from. And remember, we accumulate wealth at a much earlier age now than we did when our parents were alive. It took our parents 20, 30 years to accumulate wealth. These guys, in 5, 10 years, you can accumulate, you know, $500 million. So I don't know where the new source of money is. And I look for that money trail. I just don't know where it is.
I think it's U.S. now.
Yeah.
I think it's much more U.S. based.
US.
You know, we're seeing a lot of Silicon Valley guys, they're all still guys, and others in that new business market set, entrepreneurs who are spending their money as they're making it.
I also
Dolly,
think
sorry, go ahead.
one of the greatest audiences of our time is the transfer of wealth. You have $30 trillion that are going to be transferred from older generation onto several next generations, whether it's from grandparents to grandkids, parents to kids. So, is that making a noise? Anyway, sorry. But I think that transfer of wealth is a huge audience, and it's especially potent in the United States of America because if there is any new wealth being created, I would say it's the United States of America. Mm-hmm. If you look at the equity markets, they're soaring. There are huge fortunes being made right now, and for that reason alone, I'm very confused by this market. Mm-hmm. In 1929, we had the Great Depression. Then in 2008, 2009, we had the Great Recession. And last year, I would say 2016 was the Great Correction. But there are multiple markets in the United States, and there are multiple markets in New York. And I think addressing this one market as if it was all the same is kind of nuts. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at a building like 70 Vestry, where they're getting extraordinary pricing that in no way reflects what's happening around it, mm-hmm. that doesn't weigh up to the discussion about averages. So I'm very disturbed by the focus that I see on discounts, when in fact there should be a much greater focus on the actual asking price and the actual specific product. Because I think, as you always say, Dolly, real estate is hyper-localized. Mm-hmm. And when you aren't hyper-localizing your analysis and you apply blanket discounts onto prices, I think that's kind of crazy, and I don't think the consumer needs us for that. Mm-hmm. I think that's insanity.
So what flexibility is there, you know, talking on a project-by-project basis, in terms of developers lowering prices, if it isn't one of these special projects that can keep the price integrity? How complicated is it? What sort of rigmarole do they have to go through with the banks? Is it getting easier? Are you guys seeing that on the ground level?
Well, I think there's an argument to be made that you today hear more and more agents focused exclusively on the deal and the discount instead of being more focused on choice. Mm-hmm. Because this is a market about choice, and in choice lies the greatest opportunity of all time.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point.
So what areas are you seeing opportunities in? One interesting area that has popped up is this Two Bridges neighborhood, which is essentially a new neighborhood down by the foot of the Brooklyn Bridge. What's sort of your feeling about that? Extel's building there, JDS. Have you brought buyers there?
I have.
You guys, I see a new neighborhood is the Upper East Side, Far East, because you have the subway, you know, the new subway from 96 to 63rd. Mm-hmm. There are a couple of new developments there. Mm-hmm. And it's all about pricing, you guys. It's about whoever is behind the team, about, you know, understanding the market, demand, supply. Maybe we need smaller units, studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, like we, you know, because of the wealth factor that, you know, we need to cater to the middle class. Mm-hmm. That's a very important thing. I think that was covered prior.
Well, I think it's each building has multiple classifications of quality within the building. And if you like the building and its location and whatever it delivers, then it's a humongous opportunity, the likes of which comes along very seldom, where you can go and select which unit is the best match, maybe the best unit in the building. And then if you might get a little bit on the price, so be it, but even if you're getting a price that isn't very discounted or not discounted at all, focus on quality, because there's nothing worse than buying a bargain, because when you've bought it, you own a bargain. There's nothing worse than owning a bargain. It's like owning a pair of shoes you bought at Bergdorf's that you never wear.
I think if I had to predict one area, I still think the 57th Street corridor is going to be a great opportunity in the next 12 months. Remember, there are thousands of units being built on that Upper East Side / Midtown East-West corridor. I'm not even necessarily saying for developers, new product. I'm saying resales. Remember, 18 months ago, these guys bought these as investments. They thought they were going to flip it and make a 20% profit in 1 year. It's just not happening. I think that's the real bet now. The real buy is on the 57th Street corridor.
Mm-hmm. And Dolly, we talked a little bit about that earlier. So what are you seeing there? Are you seeing buyers who are trying to get out of their contracts? These are people who locked in prices a year or two ago, and now you're seeing them closing for values that are 30% lower than what is on the market now.
I mean, we're seeing some buyers before closing wanting to renegotiate and bringing in big guns like law firms asking us to do all kinds of, market data analysis provided to them, and they are getting a discount. So I guess good news for those buyers that think of doing that and don't just go along with a contract and close. So we are seeing that, and we're seeing it being successful.
So they're getting discounts to the point at which the units that are on the market now?
Not necessarily, but it becomes a question of, do I lose my 25% deposit, right? Or do I close with a discount such that I'm happy enough?
And you were also mentioning that these days, buyers are looking, obviously, for reasons to get out of contracts in terms of, construction not being delivered the way it was promised. And you were saying that now developers are actually forbidding you to go on?
Developers are forbidding us to go on any walkthroughs. It's in our brokerage agreement now, where it was a normal standard that we would attend. In fact, sometimes instead of the purchaser, now we're forbidden, and it's part of the brokerage agreement. And if you do attend, you risk not getting your commission.
That's going to change because I feel that in certain buildings, the abuse of the buyer. Ultimately, at the end of the day, as agents, we have to remind ourselves that we act in the best interests of the consumer. And the minute something starts acting against the consumer is the beginnings of a turnaround. And I do believe there's certain buildings that have not delivered on promises or are delivering very sloppily. And the anger that is building in the buildings, especially for people who have closed at extreme prices that have adjusted since, is brewing. So I would say that that's going to be a very short-lived trend.
Yeah, but we can get around it, right? So I'm telling these buyers, I said, hire an engineer. They're going to be much unhappier with an engineer than they would have been with me. And that's exactly what they're doing. And they're getting more than they would have with me. So I don't know that it was a good strategy.
It seemed like the
In the old days, we had checklists. We would go and we would cover every little corner. We would do everything, Dolly. I mean, those were that's our job.
Yeah, it is our job.
It seemed like the magic bullet last time was the ILSA statute that Adam Lightman Bailey found and got so many buyers out of their contract. Do you see anything comparable like that today, or it's more just construction related?
I think PR fear. So the ones that actually do want to get out of a contract and just don't want to close, whatever their reasons, their attorneys are threatening, we'll go to the real deal and it'll be all over the place. So that's what's happening.
And also, I don't know if you guys are seeing it, but the 12-month flip is a real problem for some of my buyers now.
Almost all contracts
because most
now.
developers are telling you that you can't resell or flip your unit until 12 months after you close. Well, if you're if you're an investor, forget an end user. If you're an investor, you're not agreeing to those terms anymore. And the biggest part of my deals that we're seeing at a lot of these new developments is that the buyers will not agree to have that in the contract.
No, and you're absolutely right. Sorry.
What we've experienced in the last 8 years is a term I name luxflation, because this extreme escalation in pricing is really, for the most part, focused on the very high end. And when you have this extreme luxflation, you can be certain that there's going to be a bit of a pullback. But this is historical, because for the first time in the history of economics, you have this enormous, rapid, and big pullback in certain areas, with an equity market that is soaring in an economy that's very healthy, with a Senate, Congress, and President all belonging to one party. It's really unbelievable.
I'm not sure they're one party.
Remains to be seen. So if you went to a developer and you're looking to get a marketing assignment for a new development condos, and they say they need to make $3,500 a square foot to break even, but the market's at, say, $2,700 a square foot. Do you take that assignment? Do you find out more information? What kind of are you turning away assignments these days?
Tell them to call Leonard. Yeah, that's really hard to sell, right? And you have the smaller the project, the smaller the margins. And so I see a lot more people, and I talk to a lot of other brokers, and myself included, kind of having come to Jesus moments, right? Those moments where you have to sit down with people and say, listen, it's either going to work this way or it's not. And now you're seeing projects go rental, especially small ones, right? Especially the small ones where you just cannot sell for what the market's willing to bear today. But the rental market in certain areas like the Upper East Side, like Union Square and Astor Place, is for some reason very, very, very strong. So it makes more sense now to rent, carry, and maybe you'll sell down the line.
But every developer I find that I sit with pencils it in as a rental prior to penciling it in as a condo because a bank is requiring it.
And people have done that diligence this market cycle?
Absolutely.
Look, at the end of the day, any of us brokers, and there's tens of thousands of us in New York City, who wouldn't want a development project is just not telling you the truth. We all want to be on it. And if we become too realistic, let's say, in our pricing, they're going to say thank you very much, and they're going to call 10 other brokers in the door who will take it at any price that developer says.
Yeah, they say you're not bullish. And if you're not bullish, why are you here? That's a problem.
I think that the five of us up here are very realistic in what our expectations are. And if you tell the developer, we're happy to price it at this price, but you'll have to agree in 6 months to revisit the property and pricing, and they agree to that, then you're okay. But it's tough. No one wants to pass up business. It's great. Part of this forum is for new development. It's very prestigious to be on a new project. It's great for business. It's great for branding. It's great for increasing your business. And it's just, to me, it's like an annuity. It's like an insurance policy because those units turn over and they're sold and you get a piece of everything. At 432, we're on with 2 other people, plus we have a sales manager. So there are 4 of us working the building, and we pool everything, which is the very democratic way to do this.
No, it's smart. You want everybody on board.
Everybody is
That's
incentivized
good.
to work together as a team. So, but I'd be crazy at any price if they came to me and I think you're pricing 432 too high. I'm going to pass on it.
So is it harder to educate a developer or a resale seller? If you have to go to Harry Macklow and say, Harry, can you lower the prices on this? Is that a harder conversation to have?
I would never have it with him. It's basically, and again, I can only speak for myself. You pitch a project, new development. The developer says, what do you think? And you say, I think it should be 3,500 a square foot. And he says, I think it's 4,500 a square foot. What are you going to do? Walk out and say, no, I don't want to take it? Mm-hmm. I don't know many people that would do that.
These days you should, and rather be Ryan and get it 5 brokers later.
Lucky number 5. Yeah.
Does it also just depend on the developer? If you're talking about a boutique developer who's doing a 10-unit project and you've seen 10 times the amount of stuff on the market that they have, maybe you feel more comfortable saying this is how it has to be.
Well,
or not.
I think there's so many things at play when you're developing a building. Developers are actually taking on this enormous risk. It's almost a crazy risk they take on because of the time it takes to find the right site, get it planned, get it developed, get it built, get it sold. It's a long, painful procedure with a lot of pressures from all sides, including bankers, investors, brokers, lawyers, builders. It's a nightmare. Building in New York City is a nightmare. So my hat's off to all the developers because I actually think they are taking on the biggest risk of all. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's our role as agents to inform them of reality. And there is a reality, and then there's unreality. And when there's unreality and the markets are what they are, sooner or later you adjust.
But
my best example, the only thing I want to say is there's not one of us who aren't savvy. When they developed Walker Tower, there wasn't a broker in New York City, at least that's my understanding, that thought that they would achieve those prices per square foot. Not a single one. And maybe some brokers said, I don't want the project. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. All I know is that's a perfect example of doubling price per square foot what they thought was attainable, and they got it. So you really never know.
True. And then the next Walker Tower, right, that they did fell flat on its face, right, with the optimistic pricing. So
Timing.
you do never know.
It's timing. I think Walker Tower's a beautiful building, incredibly successful with extraordinary ceiling height and scale and views and a whole host of things that make for great fundamental real estate buys. But at the same time, I think real estate, new development is, its greatest beneficiary is timing. You get the timing right and you can ride the wave.
You're the only penthouse. You're the only bunch of 3 bedrooms also. Timing and product.
Anyone that tells you pricing is an exact science is full of shit. They just are. I mean, you price something too high, no one comes in the door. You price it too low, you get multiple offers, and you go into a bidding war. And if you price it correctly, maybe you'll be lucky and you'll get 1 or 2 bidders. But I personally don't think it's an exact science.
Agreed.
I mean, I think the comment I'll say on this is you just have to look at math, right? At the statistics. I think on average, about 11,000 or 11,500 apartments sell in Manhattan roughly every year for the last 10 years. And that hasn't really changed, right? And actually, that number has started going down roughly 4% a year every year over those last 10 years. And yet we continue to build more and more and more. And I think, 15, 16, and 17 developers are bringing 15,000 condos to market when we know, according to the numbers, that only 11,500 apartments will ever sell in Manhattan if history repeats itself. Or there's got to be a population event, right? Or a liquidity event. It's got to be a generational pull down of wealth that's going to push new buyers into the market. Otherwise, there's only so many people out there with this amount of money that are buying these types of apartments, and they're always going to be lured to brands like the 432s, like the 150 Charleses, et cetera. It's the smaller developers that always come up in hot markets and then fizzle out, right? Because you have, You have the innovator, the imitator, and the idiot in every market cycle.
I think we've also lost one group of buyers on the high end especially, and that is the high-end speculator. I think the high-end speculator, unless they feel they can get a really good deal right now, they seem concerned that whatever they buy at this point isn't going to have the escalation potential. And they're also as deeply concerned that some of the broker promises that were made to them as to what kind of rental returns they could get were just fantasy. So that market, which is a small section, and it's a good market because they can actually afford to absorb losses, but they have kind of withdrawn from the market now, and I think that's an element that we're missing in the high-end
We still
market.
do have, though, that park your cash market, right? Because New York is still not, a know your client, a KYC area. So we cannot know the client, know anything about them, sell them a property, and there's no issue. So we're fortunate in that way that we could still have those buyers who are just parking cash.
And you were saying, Dahlia, that just in terms of the foreign buyers, it's gone from about 70-30 foreign buyers to U.S. to 50-50?
Yeah, in my pool, yes.
432, I can tell you, and these are real statistics, is 67% American purchasers.
Yeah, at 100 East 53rd Street, we've had a lot of Chinese lookers, but the real buyers, mostly local. And what I'm finding very interesting is the domestic pied-à-terre. That is a very important audience because, as you say, the American buyer is very wealthy, and the local audience is not necessarily as important as the national foreign buyer.
Because I think that we have, I would say, people are from the Middle East, really, Asia, and U.S. buyers. Families, mom and pop buying homes for their kids because of the schools here in New York. So I still see a very much mix, maybe 60% of Americans, but I still see a lot of foreigners, Stuart.
So another question altogether that sort of ties into this is listings themselves. One thing that was talked about in an earlier panel, but I want to ask you guys about it. StreetEasy's Premier Agent program, where you can essentially buy placement next to a listing as an advertisement, and it looks like you're the broker contact. Obviously, a lot of people in the residential world are talking about it. Ryan, you came out against it. But then the firms didn't really do anything about it, and now you're taking part in it. What's kind of your evolution of your thinking there?
Sure. So when it first came out, I really rallied against it because the way it was done, one, no one told us. I had no idea. And two, they completely removed the seller's agent information unless you knew exactly where to click. And I didn't think that was the right thing to do. But I'm also not an idiot. And I also know that the internet will grow, the internet will expand, the way people search for real estate will grow, the way people search for real estate will expand, and so must our businesses in the way that we attract and gain business. And I know that for a while, right, StreetEasy has been kind of the be-all, end-all, and it's been basically free. It's been like free. Put up our listings there basically for free. You can get a pro agent thing for what, 60 or 70 bucks a month, and then all the leads come direct to you. So it's been awesome. So when StreetEasy and Zillow went and just said, no, you should pay for some of these leads, we all got pissed off. We're like, no, you invented the system and you made it free, and that's what we like, so give us back our cookies, please. And so I sat with StreetEasy and explained my position and threatened them with more Instagram videos. And they said that they were going to make a change, and they did. And they've started rolling it out slowly but surely so that you will be able to see when you look at every listing where you can click on if you want to reach a buyer's agent or where you can click on if you want to reach the seller's agent. And I'm testing out to see how it works. So far, I haven't seen too much.
Look, the real estate industry invented the term alternative facts. And alternative facts have been around a long time before StreetEasy came along. I have known agents for many decades who have promised that they have sold millions of this and billions of that, and they're the number one at this and they're the number one at that. This is just a modernized version of that. It's a technology version of it that is the evolution of alternative facts. I think what's most important at the end of the day is to go back to the consumer. What is in the best interest of the consumer? And when you start misleading the consumer, you will have a problem. I think the good news is that StreetEasy has already adjusted certain things that were blatant. And at the same time, as an industry, we have to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, we couldn't get our act together as an industry and allowed StreetEasy to create the monster. So now we have to live with it.
I mean,
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more, but when you're old like me, and you've been doing this for 25 years, and you work really hard, and you work your butt off to interact and have these great relationships with your buyers and sellers, and then you work out and get an exclusive, and it's a really nice exclusive, and then you get a phone call from someone saying that we want to be represented by someone who had nothing to do with the project. I mean, it's a bitter pill to take. It's hard to
But
take.
it's happened throughout time. It's happened a lot before in different formats. I agree it's wrong. I think it's unfair. And then at the same time, I also look at young starting agents and I say, how do these people get their foot in the door when there's so few transactions a year? I remember being a young agent, not young, a starter agent, and it was not easy to get started.
But you know what? Realtor.com and StreetEasy are entitled to make a living, right? Why are we the only ones entitled to make a living? So, you know, we're a Realtor.com pro, we're a StreetEasy pro, and the way we look at it, we just did a huge deal through a Realtor.com lead. We had nothing to do with it. Just came up, it popped up on my phone. Oh, wow, I have an inquiry about this property. I don't know why I wouldn't want to share with who gave me the inquiry. I'm willing to pay a referral fee to someone else. I don't know why I wouldn't be willing to pay them a referral fee.
We've been paying someone all along. Remember in the good old days, we used to pay the New York Times to place the classified ads,
Absolutely.
without which you couldn't sell a property in New York City.
But that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is and I agree with everything you guys are saying. Look, my grandmother used to say half of something is better than all of nothing. So I'm a firm believer in that. But when brokers are representing themselves as the exclusive broker, which in some cases it does happen
That's
through
not
StreetEasy and
I think
Zillow
it's
and
the broker.
Realtor.com,
It happens,
and they're
absolutely,
representing
Richard.
themselves as the exclusive broker of the property, I think, first of all, that's unethical.
It's illegal.
And it's illegal. And
It's
secondly,
not-
and
it's not-
my last point is, we have enough brokers in New York City. I believe there's enough room for everyone. I encourage people. But the problem is when this process started, every broker thought it was easy. We all know out here how hard it is to make a living. We work really hard. And what that is doing is it's giving new people a false sense of security and confidence that the market, being a broker, is just, it's easy. So that bothers me. I don't know how else to say it. It bothers me.
That's absolutely fair, because I think what you've just described is an illegal activity. And I think as agents, we have a we have a duty towards one another to report that.
It's not in the
Behavior should be called out
consumer's,
and reported.
Leonard, it's not in the consumer's best interest because we sign a contract with these people and we have a fiduciary responsibility with them. If a third party comes, it's like try, brokering, and that's not right because they don't know the history of the neighborhood, the building, and every case, every sale in a building has a history, and if you don't know that, you can't just write someone's coattail. And I'm not sold on. You pay to play. That's not fair.
That's what my video was about when it first came out, was that I reached out on one of my own listings, and the person who picked up basically pretended to be the exclusive agent of my listing, and that's not right. And that's not what people should do.
But that's unethical. It's not
Of course.
StreetEasy. It's
No.
unethical.
And so listen, it always like you said, we created this monster. We couldn't play well in the sandbox to create our own awesome Manhattan easy, whatever we would call it. So a third party came in and now it's there. And listen, if brokers are going to do that, or if they're uneducated on the market, maybe you take a step back even further and look at how easy it is to become a real estate agent in Manhattan.
Right.
How easy. You don't have to know what is a house. I think there's some fair housing rules that you have to know. Other than that, you can do it all on a computer. So if we're going to be that upset with agents, you're never going to be able to check everyone's moral compass. That's why you have regulating bodies, right? And that's why you have ethical brokers who can report bad behavior. Other than that, we can go back and make it even. We could educate brokers more before they get in the market, before they have the ability to become so-called premier agents.
Well, with a moral compass comes compass.
Well, it's interesting because it seems like it's an opportunity to get involved in the lead generation business. That's a technology play that you could use to generate listings. For example, Triple Mint, it got around $7 million in VC funding. They're one of the biggest buyers of those leads on StreetEasy. So, for example, does Compass see a play like that? I mean, Compass is so technology focused in terms of, hey, let's focus our business on generating the leads and owning the leads.
I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with connecting a consumer or a buyer to an agent who will help them through the process. At one point, that consumer is going to look and say, is this a quality agent? Are they providing a real service to me or not? But that's very different from coming in and saying, here, pretend this is your exclusive and go sell it. Those are two different worlds, and in that regard, I'd say to Richard, we should be calling out those agents, and it is in the interest of the consumer to do so. I think
Why is that our job? Why doesn't the industry? I mean, we have a REBNY, and I'm not being critical. Well, actually, I guess I am being critical. But it's not. I work hard enough. I don't want to be a policeman for these unethical brokers. So shouldn't it be something that REBNY should have to take on as one of their goals to stabilize the industry?
I think the Department of State is looking into it.
The Department of State doesn't have enough people. Their turnaround time on a response is 3 to 4 years.
I think peer
Then they should double the
Serious,
dues.
darling?
Seriously, so
They
all those
should-
brokers are out of business at the end of the investigation. Seriously.
Peer pressure would be much better. I think peer pressure, we should have a website of shame. Post pictures of the brokers. Badbroker.com.
Ryan, I have a question for you. We'll buy that
The
URL
Real Deal's
later.
going
It
to do
sounds
that
good.
next week.
Ryan, you have a whole show called Sell It Like Sirhan that's coming out soon. And the whole show is about teaching brokers who are beginning in the business. What is your advice for brokers starting out today?
It's not about real estate.
Sorry.
It is actually about selling everything else.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's very fish out of water for me. And we started shooting it already, and we'll shoot through September. But every episode has me going into a different sales venue and working with the salesperson who's about to lose their job or can't afford to pay rent and is passionate about what they're selling. They just don't know how to do it or how to connect with people, or at the end of the day, learning how to sell well is really kind of learning how to sell yourself well and understand who you are as a person. And it's more of an emotional journey, as well as Bravo calls it edutainment. So that's that. We might do 2 episodes that are real estate focused, but they're not going to be anything like $1 Million Listing or Manhattan pricey pads.
How have you found that real estate sales translates into other types of sales?
It's all the same, whether you're selling golf balls or fishing poles or tires or high-priced real estate. Someone always thinks they're selling for too little, and someone always thinks they're buying for too much. And everyone always thinks that they can go and find it on the internet for a better deal, no matter what, especially now.